Right. Welcome. Welcome. So how was this one? Because this is going kind of like outside of the comfort zone a little further, isn't it? The angles. It becomes a lot more, I think, maybe conceptual when we start getting to this space. But I think that we've been building to the point that I'm hoping that it's sort of starting to make sense and you're wanting to kind of understand that relational dynamic between various planets with each other. So let's go to sharing screen. Jen just realized she forgot her book at work. So she is very
Oh
sad.
no.
And I did all my homework, and then I was like 5 minutes too. I'm like running around. I'm like, where's my book? And I was like, oh no, I left it at work.
Oh.
Okay, it was just doing
Like
that
when you're a
sound.
kid and you say, my dog ate my homework.
Well, and actually, your dog would eat your homework.
Yes.
She's the perfect dog for that.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm on Can's chart first. So do you want to start, Can's?
Yeah, sure. Shall I just go through my things because I'm sure
Yes.
okay.
You just go through anything
Um,
you have.
And don't go too, I mean, don't go real fast because I'm gonna have to find your stuff. But yes, I'm ready. This is exciting.
let me try to see everything here. Got my notes on laptop. Okay, so I've got Sun conjunct Venus in Scorpio.
Mm-hmm.
That's easy because they're next to each other.
Yeah.
Along with everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Wait. Excuse me. Can I'm Sun conjunct
Venus. Here I'm
Venus.
circling it. Can you
with
see where my
Venus?
little arrow is circling on the
Uh,
screen?
yes, I see. Yeah. I see the
Okay,
sun
so
and
as she
Venus.
says the
Oh,
things,
sure. Yeah, got it. Yes.
as she
Okay.
says the things, I'll make a little note so you guys can see where that is to help you.
Okay.
But try and go there just before so that you get to practice looking for those things. Because remember, sorry, Ken, we'll be back to you now. But remember, we're all starting to know, well, that's the glyph for the sun. So she says sun. Let me look for her sun. Oh, there it is, conjunct Venus, because they're right next to each other. Okay, I got it. So just learning to follow. And obviously remembering you know your chart best. But we've seen each other's charts quite a few times now, so it's getting much more familiar as well. Okay, Kens, you're up.
Okay. And then Neptune in Capricorn, opposite, I don't know if you have Lilith on here. No.
I
Well,
don't.
opposite Chiron as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's just under the Chiron there
Mm.
in Gemini. And then Moon in Capricorn, square North Node in Aries.
Okay, and this won't draw in the North Node, but you're absolutely right. That's the North Node.
How- Oh, okay.
This app doesn't, unless you ask it to, it won't draw it into the nodes.
Oh, I see.
That's why you don't see the red line. I'm just letting you guys know, but it absolutely is a square. And we can also know that because it's cardinal sign to cardinal sign.
Okay. Um, and then Jupiter in Pisces, trine Sun and Venus in Scorpio. I don't know if Pluto makes it as well or not.
I would say so.
Okay.
I would say so. And also remember to come down to this part of your chart because I would even put Pluto into that conjunction. So if you come here, you look at Pluto and you come across and you see it's Pluto's conjunct your Sun. Pluto's conjunct your Venus.
Okay.
You see that?
Mine
So
is
the
different,
conjunction,
I think.
yeah, you work on the other one. But does it not have a table on that?
It does have a table, but I don't think it gave. Oh, I'm going to look now.
Because just to remind you guys, she usually uses AstroSeek to look at her chart, which is the other one I often talk about. And I use the AstroSeek app when I do forecasts. So my YouTube stuff is usually AstroSeek, and my personal chart work is usually more astro.com.
Yeah, it does say conjunct. I just
Okay.
didn't include it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but that's just a good because you get used to looking in one place. So sometimes it's good to just get it from a different perspective. And it is quite to the sun, it's 7 degrees of separation, so that's quite wide. But the
Mm.
sun would tend to get more space anyway. So I would give the sun up to 10 degrees because he's kind of bright and Pluto's kind of intense. So yeah. Okay, sorry, carry on.
Uh, what did I just do? The
You did
trine.
the Jupiter trine. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then Uranus in Sagittarius.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at we, yeah. Sextile Mars in Aquarius. Yeah,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And that's all I had.
Okay. What about your Saturn square Jupiter?
I mean, I have so many aspects. I don't know if I
Yeah, yeah,
must
yeah.
include them all.
Okay, no, so what were you thinking about? Sorry, what question were you answering?
Oh, no, that's all. So that was the third question, right? I just gave like one example of each. I didn't know if we must do like
Oh,
every aspect.
sorry, you were giving, okay, sorry. I can't even remember the questions. I meant to open the thing up, but I was having that issue just now, so I didn't open that up. Okay, so you were just giving an example of all the different
Yeah,
things. Is
because
there
I have quite a
anything?
few. They're like all
Yeah,
over the
yeah,
place.
you do. Is there anything that you're missing in terms of aspects?
How do you mean?
I mean, you've got all five of those aspects.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you've got that opposition. And the only one that was a little trickier to find was the opposition that you mentioned, because
Yeah.
we probably wouldn't do Neptune conjunct Chiron merely because
Yeah.
that is more than 10. That's like 14 degrees.
Oh, yes.
So that would
Okay.
actually be too big. However, you could
Yeah.
do Neptune conjunct the DC opposing the AC. I would find that stronger. And I know you said, what degree is your Lilith?
Lilith is 28 degrees.
Okay, so Lilith is not on this chart. It comes up easily on the AstroSeek one. And Lilith is a whole fascinating archetype. Maybe when we start talking about where we want to go with this next, we could look at the asteroid goddesses, which are very powerful feminine archetypes. And Lilith is one of them. So, yes, so that would be more. That would work out. The 28 would work
Yeah.
out better. But otherwise,
Yeah, that's I have.
don't negate the angle. They're quite powerful for giving for calling that an opposition to your ascendant.
Mm, mm. It's weird to think of those lines like
As being
us.
such
Yeah.
powerful points. Yeah. So
Yeah,
think
you think of the planets and the nodes and whatnot, but not really
exactly. And
those
actually,
other lines.
nodes are also points. And Lilith is also a point. They're sensitive points, and so are the angles, but the angles are the most personalized to you. Because everybody born on the same day as you is going to have the nodes at that point, and they'll have Lilith at that point, but only people born where in the world you were born, at what time in the day you were born, is going to have as 1 degree Cancer rising, which sets up the whole chart. So the angles are very, very powerful, just as we know that this is also going to be a very powerful thing because your node is conjunct. Your nodes are conjunct here, this line. And also any planets squaring the nodes have a strong karmic connection. So you have your moon, as you mentioned just now, squaring your nodes. And it would be squaring both, right? Because,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's squaring north, squaring south. And therefore it's between the nodes. And it's in astrology, we call that in the bends. So it's that 90-degree angle. It's like a corner. And any planet in the bendings of your nodes. And that includes if right now the nodes are transiting and one of your planets is in the square point to where it is now, there's going to be some kind of dharmic, karmic squeeze happening, something to work with. And obviously in your case, Cans, because that's in your natal chart, I mean, and it really does speak a lot. You see, you were also then born at the midpoint between eclipses because it's going to take another so many months before we get to those eclipses. And it's the same many months since the last eclipse season. Because remember, eclipses are going to happen by your nodes. So therefore, this moon was right in the middle of the 6-month gap between eclipses at the time that you were born. And your moon is obviously these nodes are the lunar nodes that we are talking about. And it's interesting to know that all planets have nodes, but we don't tend to put them on the chart as much. I've done a bit of work with the Venus nodes, and they are not opposite each other always, the way that the lunar nodes are.
That's weird.
So, yes, so all planets will have nodes, but when we talk about them in the context, certainly for the next good long while, I think that you guys are learning astrology, it'll always be the nodes of the moon. So, because your moon is squaring those two lunar nodes, it's also that emotional setting, but moon is also our embodied self, our emotional intelligence, our cyclical rhythms and awarenesses. Those are constantly being put under pressure for you. And also, the moon can be mother. And obviously, you lost your mother young. You've had a lot of, and when you lost your mother, remember, you've got a Capricorn moon. Capricorn rules the spine. You got scoliosis. So it linked directly, which is a bending of the spine, now that I think about it. And you have a moon in the bends of the nodes. So it's, in some ways, that has been a very literal manifestation for you. And so, just even working with your spine, working with eclipse season, these can all be spaces where your moon in your birth chart will never move, but you get to work with whatever karma and dharma that is bringing for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I always forget that the the nodes are to do with the moon.
Yes. Yeah. And
But yeah, that's very
eclipses.
interesting.
Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about with regards to this lesson on angles and what you felt about anything there?
The only thing that was a bit confusing for me was the thing about orbs. I don't know if anyone else was a bit
I
confused.
also was a bit
Okay.
confused.
So an orb, remember what I just said to you now, like I would give the sun a full 10 degrees. That's an orb. So it's like the orb is the amount of degrees that you would consider conjunction. Because strictly speaking, is a conjunction just going to be if the sun and the planet with it are at 14 degrees in your case? Is that a conjunction? No, we're going to give it a little bit of a buffer room. And certain planets will get more space. So the moon and the sun will get more space to say, well, if you're 10 degrees close to me, then I'm going to count. Whereas maybe Pluto might do less degrees to Uranus, for example. Obviously, with the sun, he's going to be lumped into the sun's bigger orb of atmosphere. Think about it that way, as an orb of atmosphere, like a bubble. So I might be here, but my aura is a bit bigger than my physical body. So you can almost think of it as the planet's aura. So there is this sphere of influence that is bigger than just that single degree point to which your planet is. And also, depending on the aspect, it also makes a difference. So a conjunction is a very strong aspect. And so it gets a bit more space. It can have like 10 degrees. Whereas a sextile, we'd say, well, just do 2 or 3 degrees either side. It's still important, but it's not as intense. But then there is another way of sometimes looking at it where we're not being too pedantic and saying, for example, you've got Mercury at 27 degrees, and 20 degrees away from that, you have Pluto, but they are conjunct by sign, which means they're all in the same sign. They're not actually conjunct, but they're conjunct by sign. So sometimes you can do that as well. Or if we took, let me see the degree. Oops. Okay, if we took what's this guy? Mercury to your Jupiter. It's too many degrees. It's 27 degrees, 12 degrees. It's not putting a line there, and it's big. But in traditional astrology, that would still be considered trine by sign. So they both have a watery connection, and we've talked about how water likes water. The same elements like each other. So you have a water Mercury and a water Neptune, a Jupiter. And even though they're not in degree aspect, they are still in a more of a trine influence if we had to give them one.
Okay. Yeah, that makes
Okay.
sense.
Cool. Do you feel good about that? Should I move on?
I mean, yes, as good as I'm going to feel.
It does take a bit of practice, as we know, with astrology. Okay, Elaine, how did you manage? Did you get anywhere with your homework or?
I did, I think, but if I look away from my page, I lose it. So please bear with me.
We all bear with you.
So I think so. My sun is square my moon in Pisces. Sorry, that right? No.
Yes. Yes. Sun in Pisces, square your moon.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. My sun is conjunct Mercury in Pisces.
Mm-hmm.
My moon in Gemini is trine Uranus in Libra.
Mm-hmm.
Sun is opposite Pluto in Virgo.
Mm-hmm.
And Neptune in Sagittarius is sextile to Pluto in Virgo.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I have a grand cross, but I'm really not sure. The four mutable signs, my moon in Gemini, Pluto in Virgo, Neptune in Sagittarius, and Sun in Pisces.
Okay, so this is where we would do by sign they are, but otherwise no, because
Okay.
this one's at the Pluto's at the end of the sign and Neptune's at the beginning. So you can see what you actually would have would be a T square. So instead of getting this Sagittarian limb of that, I wonder if I can can I open Zach's chart here? I'll go to Zach's chart just now. I'll see if it comes up in. I know Marty's got a lot of different aspects in hers. We'll look. Otherwise, I'll go back to Zach's chart, which is one of the ones I used as an example, and then I'll point it out to you. But what you have is a T square, so it's one opposition, square, square, not two oppositions. You see that because your moon is not opposite your Sagittarius planet. And it's
Okay.
quite a wide T-square gain because you see it's 23 and 26. Those are perfect. But 16 is quite, a step back from that. However, because it's the moon, to come back to our conversation around orbs, you also look at which is the fastest planet. The moon moves fast. She takes 2.5 days. So what time were you born? 9:30 a.m. So by the end of this day, the moon would have been fully in that. Would have moved into being like probably 20, 25 degrees. And so she would have been much more square, those two planets. But because she's fast, this software has called this a T square. If the moon had have been Neptune, it might not have said 16 degrees to 26 degrees Pluto. It might not have called it because they're both moving so slowly. But because the moon is faster moving and because the moon, like the sun, are those ones that get like a bigger aura. And literally in the sky, you can see their aura. So it's a nice way to remember that they're kind of getting a little bit, have a little bit more weight and a little bit more space.
Yeah.
Okay, was there anything else you wanted to kind of look at here?
That's about as far as I got. But I would love to just sit with this and have more time and just really,
It is going to be one of those things that really takes time. You see how you've got some interesting green lines here, which we'll see in most people's charts as well. Those are aspects that are also important, but they are what would be called minor aspects. So the ones that I've taught you are called the Ptolemaic aspects. They're the top 5. But that doesn't mean there aren't a million squillion other ways of looking at it. It's basically just dividing the chart. So a conjunction is looking at one full circle. An opposition is splitting it in half. A square is dividing it in quarters. And so you can get up to septiles and octiles and all of these complex things. And as we get to those layers of a chart, I'm still learning about them. They're very complex and they more subtle. But that's also going to show you maybe like the septiles tend to be on a more spiritual level and so on. So this one will be more karmic levels. So what you have here is an aspect where the planet is said to be invisible to the other planet. So basically, Libra is opposite Aries, and the sign on either side of Aries, Libra can't see. That's the concept in this. So that's what's called a non-aspect sometimes because they're not in relationship with each other. But just imagine that somebody's come to stay in your house and you don't actually know them and you don't see them because they're in a flat outside, but you know they're there. It changes the energy. Your pets behave slightly differently. Maybe you can hear them on the phone, but you don't really have a connection with them. So it's a non-relationship, but it's not happening and it's not impacting at all. So it's kind of like that. It can be a little bit awkward. And it can mean that, let's say, you're being triggered and you've got two very strong ones here. as well. You know, you've got one Aries Scorpio side and one to Taurus Libra side. So it could be if you have, like now, we're going to have a Mars retrograde. This is a big deal. Okay. So Mars is already in shadow and he only retrogrades every 2 years. He's the slowest planet to retrograde. And he only does it every 2 years. And it's the retrograde is about 2 months, but the shadow will be the pre-shadow 2 months lead up, 2 months of, 2 months after. So a Mars retrograde is a 6-month journey. And he usually takes, you can see he kind of works in twos. He usually takes about 2 months in a sign and about 2 years around the chart. And then every 2 years, he has a retrograde to kind of recalibrate that cycle. So where he is in the sky right now is he's just stepped into Leo. So he went into shadow at the later degrees of, and we can look at this in each of our charts individually, and that'll help you to understand where is my Mars retrograde going to impact. And actually, yours is a great example because you literally have a 0 degree IC, and so you are starting the process of the shadow in your third house of community, siblings, cousins, neighbors, small trips, little details, and you're moving it into home roots and security, and then it's going to backtrack, and then it's going to go forward again. So we're only getting out of the shadow, the last shadow, I think around April, and the retrograde starts December 6th. So from December 6th, we're going to end the year with this Mars retrograde, and Mars retrograde tends to be uncomfortable because Mars is about forward movement. He's about getting shit done. And when he can't move forward, he gets really grumpy. So it's going to be in for you. Now you're going to say, okay, first of all, we're looking at the Cancer archetype, which is very much, and in your case, maybe we would say you tend to be very nurturing and motherly with your clients, with your community, with your friends, with your families, with your neighbors. And you tend to be maybe more gregarious at home and maybe more playful sometimes with your children or whatever in general because of those two signs. But now we come to December time. Maybe do you take some time off?
I do after Christmas, yeah.
Okay. So maybe you take some time off, but you're only taking it off after Christmas. So we're going to say your family want you to be engaged. They want you to be playful. They want you to be fun, but you're like now retrograding in your home thing and you're getting stressed about, I need to fit these clients in. I can't do it all. I can't be, and it's creating drama inside of you. And then maybe it's spilling out. And then when it moves into Cancer, you might be like, I'm spending all this time mothering everybody else and I don't get to mother myself and my children. You know, you might end up with that. And then when Mars goes direct again, we get the opportunity to go, okay, I can see where my balance is out. I can see where I'm not doing things the way that I want to be doing them. And then we start to have the opportunity to make corrections.
Totally get you there. Thank you.
So the reason I was actually getting into Mars retrograde is that this is also going to impact if you have Mars in your birth chart, having this awkward, well, he's conjunct Saturn, which is hard enough. They're two tough planets. And he has this awkward conversation with Uranus. And now in transit, there's a Mars retrograde. It's actually going to trigger your Mars, Saturn, and Uranus to a degree just because of how you naturally default to that conversation. So in that case, Uranus is about shocks and paradigm shifts. And he is kind of invisible to your Mars and your Saturn. And Saturn saying, come in your body, in your first house. So Saturn's saying to you, come on, Elaine, you need to have good, healthy habits. You need to go slow and steady wins the race. Are you feeding yourself well? Are you doing these things? Because that's Saturn. And Mars is irritated in Taurus because it's slower than he likes. And he's like, can't we just have a bit of fun sometimes? Can't she just go and move her body the way she likes? Why does she have to do it that way? So there's a constant thing. And then Uranus might come in. Invisibly, we didn't see him. And do an Elaine thing, which is like fall and bump your head. Or do you know what I'm saying? It might be a thing like that's something that is part of your default setting in your chart. So now we have this Mars retrograde, and it might activate that a little more strongly. And then it means that you come back to, here I am worrying so much about my community, my neighbors, my clients, my children, my family, my home. What about me? Because that's where it is in your own chart. but what about me? And so then you have to recalibrate that in all the other layers. Good luck.
Thanks, Cindy. That was awesome.
May I ask a question?
Yep.
Okay, so the relationship between Uranus and Saturn on her chart,
Yeah.
is that because they don't really, is it the green line?
Yes.
Okay, yes, all right.
And so they're
That's
invisible to each other, but not really
okay.
invisible. Yeah.
All
So I
right.
just
Thank
wanted to point that out because you have such a nice clear one here, Elaine, just so that if you see these weird things in your chart or in other people's charts, you don't panic. You know what? You could look at one thing in a chart. You could look at somebody having a Pisces sun, and you could start to tell them a lot about themselves. I mean, in her case, you would say, well, she's also thinks in that way. So now we can say a whole lot more. Or just look at the moon. So if ever you decide, hey, I want to open up your chart with a friend or family member and have a look, and you see something that overwhelms you, go to something you already know. Start there and just see where your feet land. But there'll always be stuff we don't know. And like I say, these extra aspects, I'm still learning a lot about them all the time.
Thanks,
Okay.
Cindy.
Do you feel happy if I move on? Okay. Let's see. 10.
I left my homework at work.
Okay, but see if there's anything that you can remember or you want to.
Okay, so my sun is in opposition to my Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
My Uranus is in opposition to my Mars,
Mm-hmm.
and my North Node is in opposition to my Saturn, but
And
that doesn't show up on there.
yeah, because it's a little bit wide. North node wouldn't get as much space. The
Oh,
nodes wouldn't get 7 degrees. They'd get more 2 or 3 degrees probably.
okay,
And
so
then
then
I
they're not.
do just want to mention again that different astrologers might have different feel comfortable with different spheres of influence, different orbs. So there are sort of standards and norms, and then there's different feelings with astrologers. And the way that I like to bring that into my chart is what do I feel about that? So let me just go to my chart quickly and I'll give you an example. And you can literally sit with this and meditate with it and feel both parts in your body. Let me just think of one of my ones I've worked with on this. Okay. So Mars is at 24 degrees of Taurus, and Uranus is at 17 degrees of Scorpio. It's drawing in an opposition, but it's quite a wide opposition. So had you asked me about this, do I feel that pull in my life and in my body maybe 3 years ago? I think I would have, but mildly. Whereas I have now been through Uranus opposition, which happens for all of us around 44 years old. So I'm 45 now. So last year, Uranus was traveling at 17 degrees of the opposite sign. It's now on top of my Mars. And then after it goes direct, it's going to be on top of my MC. So because that's been activated very strongly in this, what we call a midlife transit for me, I now feel that dynamic of Uranus Mars much more intensely than I would have a few years ago because I've had this maturation process. It is an opposition, it's a wide-ish opposition. And actually, because Uranus opposition, Uranus went over Chiron first, which is at 12 degrees. And they haven't drawn in that line. But since Uranus went over my Chiron, I feel like my connection with Chiron and Uranus is also much more intensified. So it can either be that you see that it's not written on your chart by the software that you're using, and then you think, oh, well, it can't be then. And you sit with it and you go, no, but I do kind of feel at odds with that part of myself. Or it can be that you have a transit that's very intense. I mean, like you're in your Chiron return now, Jen. So for example, you might find that because these are 7 degrees apart, which is quite wide for Chiron, but I'm willing to bet you're going by the end of your Chiron return, you're gonna feel Mars and Chiron are conjunct. Mars and Chiron have a relationship. I don't care if they're 7 degrees apart. These two have a relationship. My wound and how I react to things, and you have that's an Aries for you, so it's a reactive kind of energy. So when I feel hurt, I react without thinking, or that kind of energy.
Mm.
So you're probably going to find that it intensifies.
Okay, even though they're not on the thing, did it?
No.
And then my moon is conjunct with Neptune,
Mm-hmm.
but they're in different signs.
Okay. Yes.
So does that count?
It's called an out of sign conjunction. It does count. It does count. It's just it has a different flavor because Neptune has a different flavor to your moon. So it's definitely there. But also remember that the moon moves fast and your moon is at 28 degrees and 54 minutes. So we could call that 29 degrees, which is the last degree of Scorpio.
Yeah.
So when you were but a few hours old, the moon was already in the next sign. So it's getting closer to Neptune, obviously. So but you've explored your moon, and even though it's the 29th degree, you know that you have a Scorpio moon. You're not in question about whether you have a Sag moon because you can really feel the Scorpio nature of your moon. So then you also can think of it in the way of, and then I can burst into this growth and expansiveness and fiery energy of Sagittarius. It's always just around the corner for you from the deep, intense scorpionic stuff. It's almost like you could push through in your personal life. That's how I would look at that. And that Neptune is almost encouraging you to be a little bit, because Neptune's quite idealistic. And Sagittarius is very big on spirituality and beliefs and exploring. So it's almost like Neptune is encouraging.
I'm lost you mid-sentence. I'm like, is what?
Okay, sorry. Neptune is encouraging your moon to
Okay, thank you.
be a little less
I was
intense.
like,
You know what I mean? Yeah, that was a Scorpio moment. Sorry, you were under the rock.
he just suddenly cut off. It was like, oh, she's gone. Okay, then I've got quite a lot of squares.
Yeah.
I've also got Uranus square my Mercury, which is square my Mars, which is square my Jupiter.
And yet, so this would be a grand cross almost. I'm just, especially what we were saying just now, Elaine, almost. But looking how that's 25, that's 27. It's counting the 27 one. And then that is 6.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit wide. It's a little bit wide, so it's not connecting here. You see, because that one's 19. It's not connecting.
Oh, okay.
And also we have cardinal, 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 fixed. That doesn't never happen, but normally if it was going to be a grand cross, it would have to be like a few more degrees in this direction in the cardinal. Because that's those, and this is where we've covered the fixed, the cardinal fixed mutable, and we've covered the elements. You start to see it when you look at this kind of aspect thing. Because if you want to know what's going to be squared to Cancer, you think, well, what's opposite Cancer? Does anybody want to say? Capricorn, yes. So those two are going to be in opposition. What are the other two cardinal signs?
It's in my
Aries
book.
Aries, yeah.
and Leo.
Libra.
Oh,
Libra.
Libra.
So those are the 4 cardinal signs. So if you remember, okay, Cancer is opposite Capricorn and it's square the other 2. What are the other 2? They're Aries and Libra. So Cancer energy is always going to be square Aries and Libra. So this is where it comes practice. It's literally just practice. Okay. So let's take another archetype where I know that quite a lot of us are strong, and your chart is certainly strong. So what is the sign?
Leo.
Leo,
Leo. And what's opposite Leo?
Aquarius,
Aquarius. And what would be squaring those? What modality is this? Is it cardinal, fixed, or mutable?
fixed.
Fixed. So what are the other two fixed signs?
Taurus and Scorpio.
Good. See how quick that is for you. Because why? Because that's
Because I
strong in
know
your
them.
chart. That's in your chart. Exactly. And that's fine. It doesn't matter how you learn it. It's just that you learn. So for you, you're much quicker on the fixed because you're living the fixed. Whereas Marty just now went Aries because she knows she's cardinal because she's Aries. So, but then you're already working on a process of elimination, right?
Mm.
So as soon as you go, because then you're pulling out 4 signs already. So then if I'm trying to remember the mutables, but I don't have a lot of mutable, well, I know at least it's not these 4. And then you start figuring it out. But this is where the aspects will get easier as you start recognizing. Because again, same thing, but we'll take a different sign just to make it a little interesting. Okay, so let's take Gemini. So Gemini is air. What other signs are air?
Sagittarius.
No,
Virgo.
Aquarius.
no.
Oh, air.
Aquarius, yes, Aquarius.
Libra and
And
Libra.
Libra. Okay, so what's nice in this particular format is it's color coded. So now those are 120 degrees from each other. So what aspect would that be?
Trine.
Star.
Trine.
Yeah.
Trine. So anytime you know that you've got planets in, like in your case, you could say 2 of the air signs, 2 degrees of Libra, Pluto, 6 degrees of Aquarius, they are forming a trine. And although Uranus is not forming a conjunction to Pluto or a trine officially to Jupiter, he's trine by sign because they're all air. So that doesn't really count, but you can still see in the way we're kind of learning it here, which is a little bit closer together. But like I said earlier, they still have an air vibe. That's their energy. And air likes air. So already we kind of see that Pluto and Uranus kind of get each other. They're in the same archetype. And they both kind of get Jupiter because he's also in air. But Pluto and Jupiter are more light. They'll get on better than, say, Uranus does to either of them, because they're forming a trine.
Okay.
Does that
That
sort of
makes
make sense?
Yeah. So then my Mercury is also trine my moon and trine my whatever that one is at the bottom.
Yes, and he's trine not by sign here. So just like these
Yeah.
two are out
Okay.
of sign conjunction, these two are an out of element trine. So it is a trine though. But just
Okay.
in terms of the quick noticing, water to water is a trine, fire to fire is a trine. You have to pay a little bit more attention when
Okay.
it's fire to water, but absolutely they are a trine. And then I think Marty has one of these too, but let's talk about it in yours, because we have had that little conversation about those 2 lines in a lane. I just
Yes.
want to point out that you have here what's called a finger of God or a yod, or sometimes it's called a yod, Y-O-D. And this pointy part here, which in your case is both the moon and it's this conjunction, moon and Neptune, that is supposed to be like a really magical place in your chart. But these are also those awkward non-aspects. So obviously this conjunction is an aspect, but these guys can't really see these guys, and these guys can't really see this guy. But these ones are sextile. So you've got a sextile here connecting them, which is an aspect we've discussed. And then you've got this awkward conversation where they aren't really able to see each other. It's called a quincunx, this
So
aspect.
why would a finger of God be and they can't see it?
So yeah, it means that this is the point that where the magic happens that you can work on, and then you could look at the other planets in context with it and say, so Saturn is trying to maybe you could, I'm just thinking of an analogy, you could maybe think of it as the headmaster, in the sense that how often do you interact with the headmaster? The headmaster doesn't really come out and ask you how your emotional health is and what your dreams are. which is what these are saying. He's not coming out to have that conversation with you, but maybe he spoke to your teacher and your teacher said, this girl, she's going to go far. She has these ambitions and she's so sweet and sensitive and we need to do this with her. And he's from the background, maybe calling a university to get you in, or he's calling your parents to say you're struggling, but you don't really know it. Do you know what I mean? So that's why he's kind of, he's not like, oh, I know my headmaster's awesome. You don't really know it, but he's supporting you in the background. But it can get awkward because maybe he made a call you didn't want him to make. Maybe that call, let's say you were going through a depressive phase at school and he called your parents and you were trying to hide it from them. And now next thing you're in a psychologist's office and you hate the idea. You know, then that's a bit like shit, but actually probably good. Do you see where I'm going with it?
Okay, yeah, okay.
And then you might say the same thing. In fact, that's a very good example because these are in your house, home roots and security. So if we were going to stay with that, you might say that part of the reason that you were going through this depression is the bully, because Mars can be a bully and Chiron is the wound. So maybe you were being bullied by someone, it was creating this drama, and you were going home and stuck in your depression and you weren't able to say anything. And maybe they couldn't see you at home, what was going on, because you have a Scorpio moon, so you're really good at hiding it. But then the headmaster contacted your parents. Now, this is a fictitious example.
Yeah.
Something along those lines, those
What did
types.
he say to my mother?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one also to play with, especially if by transit any of this is activated, which for you it literally is right now because you're on Chiron return. So this is all being activated. So I mean, again, you might look at the dynamics that you are going through with your own mother right now, and you might see like all the things that are not being said, and then you're trying to get to the point of saying the things. And then you can also look at where that's also been a case with like Devin, who's now left home. But when he was at home, it was that same dynamic of the things that I'm struggling to express and what sort of discipline. Obviously, the headmaster is also actually you. So where is that discipline part in me that is in 0 degrees of Cancer, that nurturer, that's going to be the firm mother and say, this is not okay. So maybe being the firm mother with your son, which we've had to do a lot lately, and also being the firm nurturer with your mom. And moon can also represent mother, or you as a mother, or your mother. So do you see it's complicated? And the wound and bully. So yeah, it's multivalent.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely something to explore. And your Mars retrograde is going to be happening in your 11th and 12th house. So you're going to play with that. And your Mars retrograde is going to go straight over your Mercury. So it's very much going to be about changing your thinking. If I keep thinking this way, I'm going to keep getting these results. I need to stop. So those are the things that are probably going to show up for you most particularly.
Okay.
Let me just jump back to Candace's quickly to see where hers is. Okay, yours is going to be also in your first house. Candace. Oh, not also. Sorry, the example I used with Elaine was planets she has in her first house, not where her Mars retrograde was. But yours is going to be in your first house. So it's definitely going to bring up issues of your health, your healthy habits and rituals and routines, and how to nurture yourself better as a Cancer rising, and also have more fun, maybe healthy hobbies, maybe, and pleasures.
Did you say we're in shadow already?
Yes, we're in shadow already. It's already moved into Leo.
I feel like that's already happening.
Yes, well, it would be. But what you'll find is in the beginning phase, so the pre-shadow, it's like themes start showing up. And then you work with the themes, and then the retrograde, it gets uncomfortable, drama happens, and that really spotlights those same themes that started to show up. But like maybe because, oh, well, now I've gone and hurt myself because I tried this new exercise thing that I thought was going to be great, and I wasn't actually enjoying it, and now I've twisted something. And then in the post shadow, okay, let's get real. I'm going to use your example, Jen. Like Jen was working with karate and then pushing through because she really wanted to, and then realizing but she wasn't enjoying it and coming to that decision, and that wasn't part of her Mars retrograde story, but that's a great kind of example. And then going, actually, I'm going to do something different. I'm not enjoying this. And that result of this is what I've got to do, that comes in the post shadow.
That's cool.
Okay, Marty. Marty's got a very interesting patterny chart. Can you see?
Mm. She's got lots of fingers of God.
She has two, which almost makes a star. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Mm.
Hectic.
One finger of God is quite unusual, so two is really unusual.
Yes. So, all right, I can't, so I'm still working on my homework and stuff. So I'm very much learning stuff right now, but ask me any questions. Like ask me, I can't tell you. Just ask me a question.
Okay,
So
so
I see my sun is in Aries, right?
yeah.
And okay, so like conjunct with is that
I
uh
would call it a
Venus?
conjunction. It's a bit far.
They're too far away. Okay.
It's more than 10 degrees away. So
Okay.
conjunct by sign, but not really.
All right.
But I want to point out your grand trine. Can you see this grand trine? Sun to moon to
Hang on.
Pluto.
Wait. Wait.
Okay. Can you see my
Okay,
screen?
okay. Just sun.
Sun to moon, across to moon, down
Yes.
to Pluto, up to sun.
Gotcha. All right.
So
Sure.
that is, and you see a big blue triangle, and she also has moon to, because moon is a little bit further on in degrees than the sun. You see, sun's at 15, moon's at 24. So
Sure.
moon, Venus, Pluto. So you've actually got two grand trines.
Mm.
And grand trines are usually, they don't, again, it's not always, but they're usually connecting, in your case, all the fires. It's your fire planets. You've got planets in all three fire signs. So that would be a grand trine in fire. It could be a grand trine in water. It could be one planet in a different sign, depending on the degree points. But in your case, it's a fire grand trine. So what I find with grand trines is that this is kind of like a karmic atta girl. You know, you've done something great and I'm giving you this gift. But so oftentimes with these easier, beautiful aspects, we just are a certain way. We don't know we're that way. So people are like, oh, let's say fire. Oh, you're so naturally creative and passionate and energized about things. And you'll be like, am I really? And it's not that hard. Aren't you like that too? But actually, it is hard. Somebody with a lot of water would be like, I don't know how you do that. But for you, it's almost like an underappreciated talent because you've only ever been that way. Whereas a challenging aspect like a T-square or oppositions or conjunctions, they're going to push you into uncomfortable places where you're forced to kind of through trial and error grow through them. So it's nice to kind of be grateful for the easeful ones, but also grateful for the challenging ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Good
you can see you've got the two fingers of God here. So Mercury is the point of your one, and the bottom would be Pluto and your Saturn Neptune conjunction. And the other one's point would be Jupiter with Moon and the Pluto Saturn and the Neptune Saturn conjunction. So Neptune and Saturn are involved in both of them, and they're a conjunction. So that's an interesting thing to note as well. And you've got a kite. I want it's quite hard. You have to tune your eyes into the patterns, but a kite is when you have, watch this one. So from Venus to Moon, Pluto. Okay, so we've got that grand trine, and now from Moon, the Neptune Saturn conjunction to Pluto. Can you see it makes like another little triangle on top of that grand trine? That looks like a kite. Can you see that? Oh, we lost the
Yes.
name. Did she drop off? Yeah, so that is called a kite. So that is also, look, it's three planets connected by trine, and in this case, two other planets connected by sextiles. And so those are all nice, easy, flowing, connected, let's work together, juicy dynamics. So that is a powerful thing to have as well. And then, of course, you do have T-squares. So it's not all easy. And also, these fingers of gods are rare, they're powerful, but they're also challenging because you have the sextile at the bottom of each one. So the sextile is a let's work together, but then it's let's work together, push this planet right outside of its comfort zone into something magical. And just to give you an example of that in this chart is that Saturn is very much about our karma and very much about discipline. And he's conjunct with Neptune, who is outside of Saturn's orbit. So it's almost like Neptune has no boundaries, and Saturn's business is boundaries. So they're irritating for each other. Well, actually, I don't think Neptune much cares, but Saturn certainly gets annoyed by Neptune's lack of boundaries. So this is an interesting balance for you in the sign of Libra. So these two are trying to find a balance because they have to live next to each other and they're kind of opposites. And then Pluto is also a very karmic transformative planet. So these heavy hitters are working together through your mind, but your mind isn't consciously aware of that. And obviously, our mind is very much about consciousness. And you also have an unhappy Mercury in the sign of Pisces, where it doesn't like to be because our minds can't think clearly underwater. We see in sort of blurry, patterny movement, which is not how Mercury, which is a Gemini Virgo kind of planet that wants to see the details and wants to get it done and build the puzzle, not be under the waters trying to figure it out. And then there's this transformation, discipline, idealism thing into that. But you're an author. I mean, you literally write stories. So these guys are pushing you into this deep into this imaginal world, which Pisces is very imaginal. And you can't think the way that another person would. This is part of your creative genius, but it can be awkward because you don't realize, again, we could see here, this is also the headmaster again. You don't realize that the headmaster gave you a topic to write about that you absolutely hate, but it was going to unlock something that actually was brilliant.
Mhm.
Maybe this is like the strict headmaster and the quirky art teacher hanging out together. And here's the like really loud, heavy, deep-voiced science teacher or maths teacher down here. So you've got all these, and then this like little quirky person, like brain, trying to write a story with all these other people pressing their big ideas, because these are outer planet energies. They're big ideas coming into this little personal planet that's kind of feeling a little overwhelmed by the weight of the waters of Pisces. So you can see that's like we could see the challenge in that for you, but also the magic in it. And that's always where I like to kind of go, where is this going to challenge me? And where is this going to help me? And how can I harness that? Oh, and
All right.
you also have your Mars retrograde here in your third and fourth house, like Elaine does.
Okay.
So it's going to be a similar aspect. And I mean, that's also for you. I mean, you're often between homes, you're often looking after family members, siblings. The third house is siblings, and you're very involved in supporting siblings. And so, yeah, it's like, can I just go to my house and have my space and do what I enjoy? Because Leo is in your fourth house, giving you pleasure and whatnot, versus the Cancerian, like how much do I have to look after everybody else before I get to go home and look after me? And you've been nursing your husband, and you've had I'm sure you're feeling this already.
Yeah, for sure. I am. It feels really reflective of exactly where I feel. This is really. Yeah, I'm trying to look for any questions I might have. So, the
Chiron.
Chiron. Anything going on with
So
that?
now this is another thing to just remember as we're learning patterns, because unless I ask this app to put in aspect lines with Chiron, it doesn't naturally do it. But Chiron is at 20 degrees. So now I want you to look around and see if there's anything close to 20 degrees.
Was that Venus? Wait, who is that?
Venus is at 27. It's a bit wide for Chiron.
All right.
But look at the Mercury.
Hang on. Listen, I'm still having to look at pictures, honey. So
That's
hang on.
fine. Do you
Is
want
that
me
in
to?
sextile to Mercury?
Exactly. Now, I just want to point something out that I've just noticed, and I've worked with you for, Marty, I actually realized the other day that I've worked with you for 3 years now. So, Mercury over here, 20 degrees,
Yes.
36 minutes.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
sign to the next sign, that's going to be 60 degrees, which is a sextile, Chiron. So, these two, and now look, we've got another finger of God down to Pluto.
Oh.
So, you actually have
How
another
come that
finger.
doesn't show up though? Is that because the Chiron's not activated on this chart? Is that
Yeah, let me stop this share for a second. I'm gonna go to another one where I can open it up live.
so
Hold on.
Marty's got three finger of gods.
I've only just noticed that myself. Okay, I'm gonna
Gosh,
take you wait.
gosh, Marty.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm at a very strange, I'm the oldest person here, and I think maybe this happens to I think it must happen to the older people because I think life just evolves into, that kind of thing.
Okay,
Is there,
I'm gonna
is
show
there,
you something. This
what?
is you, but I've just come into a live chart. Those ones I've just saved for every time we do this. I'm going to show you how to do this, okay? If you're on this application. So I'm in
Uh,
Marty's chart now, and I'm going to go to chart selection. And then I'm going to put, okay, today's date is here. So if I wanted to put on my transits, which I'm going to show you, then you scroll down and here it says aspect Chiron. You could go to aspects to all objects and it'll
Oh,
add to your ascendant, descendant, etc. But I'm just going to do Chiron for now so I don't overwhelm you because once I start adding more things, it gets louder. Whilst we're here, you can see it will also add more complicated aspects, quintiles, biquintiles, semi-squares, etc. You can choose your orb, add an orb. So if you wanted to make it bigger or smaller, because you wanted to get a little bit more specific, this is also where we can change our house. So we are using, no, this is not the house. Sorry, that's a different kind of styles of astrology. You can add in the nodes, more info on the nodes or the fixed stars. And as I said, if maybe we get into this down the line, you can look up your Lilith. So you can add your Lilith, you can add other planets, etc. But we're just gonna do that one thing just to keep it a little bit more simple. Okay, so and then it says chart and with transits with that little plus. And if I click on that, which I can't do on the ones that I've saved, but now can you see the green planets on the outside?
not yet.
Oh, you can't.
I guess.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay,
Oh,
that's
there
where
you
the
go.
planets are
Jeez.
now. That's where the planets are now. Okay. So now you can say, well, Chiron is right here just after her sun, which we already know because Venus and Chiron returns. So Chiron's at 20 degrees. But this is how you can see how they're impacting you now. And meanwhile, we have now put in the aspect to Chiron. So it's made that sextile and it's drawn down. So now you've got this beautiful star action more completed.
It
Mhm.
looks like a pentacle. Marty, are you sure you're not a witch?
She must be.
There's not enough depth in me to be a witch.
Keep quiet. You're
I
Mercury
was
and Pisces.
actually, unless a witch floats around, then I do a good job of that.
Go get your
Just need to get
broomstick, Marty.
Yes, we just
What is it, Jenny?
Said, go get your broomstick.
Oh, baby, I would so love to like be like a crow up there in the and looking down on the earth, huh? So
Yes.
yeah.
So anyway, so that's
Amazing,
an
though.
interesting way to see how it happens. So now in that case, you can see that in the previous finger of God, the yod that we discussed as an example, we used Mercury as the top point, but in this case, Pluto forms the top point or the finger part as well in another
Mm.
one. So yeah, very, very powerful
But she's
indeed.
also got a point there at Neptune. Do you see that?
Mm, that's true. So Neptune forms a
She's
point.
got four.
Yeah, she does. You're absolutely right. Look at that.
Look,
She's got one, she's got two, she's got three, and she's got four. Yeah. That's a lot.
Hmm.
Hectic, Marty.
That
Is
is,
that
it's
why I'm not sleeping sometimes? Yeah.
well, I mean, that's your life. That's always there. So the not sleeping is probably more something else triggering that. But yeah, you always have this level of depth, believe it or not. You just said you're not that deep. You certainly are.
All right.
And
Well,
complex. So, as homework, if you would like, let me just stop the share and go back to the other charts quickly. I was going to suggest that you work with, oh, have I opened the right one now? Hold on. Oh, crumbs, hang on. No, I've just opened the same one, haven't I? Yeah, okay. That we pick a planet, I'll help you. We'll pick 2 planets. I'll help you to pick 2 planets you want to work with, and then just spend the next little while working with those planets that you can like embody that conversation. So instead of getting totally overwhelmed by there's 10 planets, there's nodes, there's angles, there's a million lines and conversations, let's pick 2. So whose chart am I in? Candace. Okay, so Cans, you get to, if you know already something you're working on and you say, I really want to focus on that, we can go straight there and I'll give you some guidance. Otherwise, you could choose to work with Mars because he's going retrograde, or you could choose to work with Mercury because he's going retrograde and you have Mercury retrograde in your chart, and then a planet that's connected. What do you have a sense or anything that you know you're struggling with? Like we talked, in fact, about the moon and the node. You could do that.
Yeah, actually, maybe the moon. The moon was the first thing I thought of.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then you could either go to your moon's conversation with Venus if you wanted, or with Jupiter if you wanted, or you could go to that more challenging one and feel kind of push, pull, squeeze, crunch of how do I lean into Aries North Node, where I'm growing into Libra South Node, where I just want to stay nice and comfortable and not rock any boats. And then this like really kind of uncomfortably structured moon.
Mm. Yeah, I think I'll do that one, the nodes and the moon.
Okay. So it's definitely clearer when we do a harder conversation because we know those discomforts in our lives. We maybe just haven't languaged them. So what I'm thinking is you will go before bed or any time where you're having a meditation and you'll connect and you'll just start sort of call on your moon, call on those nodes, feel what sort of angles are there. So, okay, if I was in that thing, I could have shown you how we could also add, you can do that. You can go and add those aspect lines to all things. If we'd said that, it would have created that big T square for you.
Hmm.
So then you can feel into that and you can go, okay, well, and you can think about where they are. Like my moon is in my 7th house of relationships. My moon can be my mother. My moon can be my body. My structure, the structure and body of me in Capricorn, like how do I feel with that? And then how do I be a little less concerned about what others, Libra wants in we would call that the 3rd house more if we're talking about it in relationship to your moon, and in the 9th house. So 3rd and 9th houses, ask yourself about those topics and then feel into that and just see if you get some insight. So this is taking astrology into a more meditative, contemplative practice and then just picking out one conversation to work with. And then try to do it multiple times you might find you work hard on it for the next 3 days and you get some insight and you're done. Or you might want to do a little bit for a week or whatever. This is just a fun homework. So no failing if you don't if you don't do it. But just to give you a little bit of another perspective of how to embody and converse with and understand those internal dynamics represented by those external dynamics.
Cool.
Okay, Elaine, do you have any thoughts about something you want to work on?
Maybe the Pluto side of things. I've
Pluto.
always sort of been with the Pisces and delve
Okay.
into that. So perhaps
Okay.
opposite.
Okay, well, what I quite like about that is Pluto right now in the sky is about to, on like the 20th, 19th actually, of this month, step finally into Aquarius, and he's done. So he's been vacillating for a few years across the fence, changing signs, and that's going to be it for 20 years. So if you're working with your Pluto, and I'm going to suggest your Pluto and your moon. And then at the same time, Pluto in the sky is very present, making this really big transformative shift. That's also giving you a bit of an opportunity to kind of really connect broader. Does that make sense? So you'll work on it inside of you, but it'll help you tap into Pluto in the sky. And what is interesting is Pluto is moving from Capricorn. So what would Pluto in the sky be to your Pluto?
Sorry, what was that?
What can you imagine what angle Pluto in the sky at 29 degrees of Capricorn would it make an aspect to your Pluto at 26 degrees of Virgo? Think of the elements. Does anybody see it?
Virgo? Is that
Earth?
Virgo? Oh.
Yeah, Virgo, that's it. Virgo is Earth. What is Capricorn? Earth. Your Pluto is in the late degrees of an Earth sign, and Pluto is now in the late degrees of an Earth sign, so they would be
Trine.
trine. That's it.
Yeah.
So, Elaine, you have two opportunities. You can, oh, have I lost her? Can you hear me, Elaine?
I think Elaine was frozen for a bit there.
Oh, I wonder if she's got sound on. Elaine, can you hear us? Okay,
Gone.
let's wait for her to come back on, and then I'll tell her that. Let's in the meantime go to you, Jen. What do you think you want to work with?
I might do my Mars return, seeing as it's in retrograde.
But it's not a return.
Oh, what did you say it was? Mars was in retrograde. What?
Yes, Mars will be retrograde. Elaine, we're going to come back to you. Sorry, we lost you. You are having Chiron return, which is coming close to your Mars at the same time that Mars in the sky is going to go retrograde. Okay. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Well, do you want to work with Mars in the sky going over your Mercury?
Yeah.
So slightly different dynamic here because now you're working with, and this is what I was actually going to say to Elaine as well, because now you're working with a planet, one planet in your chart, and the aspect it is going to be making or is making to a planet in
So
the sky now.
It'll be
Yes.
conjunct my
But it's not
Mercury.
actually in your chart. The Mars is not in your natal chart. So now you're working with how is my Mercury being impacted by the external Mars?
Okay.
And then if you wanted to work where this is a little bit more interesting for you is that Mars in your chart is square Mercury. So when Mars in the sky is conjunct Mercury, that's just another challenging aspect. So you are born with a challenging dynamic already. You're born with a square between Mars and Mercury. I want to do it this way. I don't think that's the right way to do it. How can you tell me what to do? Well, I don't know because now, and your Mercury's in the 12th house, so it can be like psychological warfare and your self-undoing. So you get into your head and you're like, oh my God, I can't do that. Whatever. And Mars is like, bugger that. I'm doing what I want. So there's this dynamic that you have with you all the time. So you're quite used to Mercury and Mars having a bit of a combative dynamic. Now in the sky, there's going to be this retrograding process over your Mercury. It's like a double whammy. So you get to work with all of those. So think of the dynamic between Mars and Mercury, and maybe start with your own Mars and Mercury, and then almost feel like they're inside of you and feel as if I'm leaning out into the bigger picture of Mars and how it's impacting me. And of course, that also is tying in very strongly with your Chiron return because it's right there as well. So depending how you're feeling with how many balls you want to juggle, You could throw Chiron in there. But when you start to feel overwhelmed, just simplify, pull it apart, and just go, okay, I'm just going to feel into my Mercury with the now Mars, or my Mercury and my natal Mars, how it feels.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, Elaine, what I was saying, I'm not sure when you froze there, but what I was saying to you is because Pluto, your Pluto, is actually trine Pluto right now, you can do that. You can work with what is my default of this? Pluto in Virgo in the 5th house. What does that mean? Go back to your notes from the Pluto class and what you felt about it then. And then think about, well, what is Pluto in Capricorn, which started in 2008? What have we seen? We've seen, Pluto in Capricorn started with the market crash of 2008. That was like his, I'm here. Financial markets are going to be changing. And then that's been 16 years of top-down power breaking down and crumbling and the toxicity in that coming to the surface. And so now when we're in that culminating point of that before Pluto moves into Aquarius, how does that feel for your Pluto? Because they've been in this sort of supportive dynamic because they're both Earth and Pluto's going to shift. So how does that feel? But then also you could work with your Pluto moon because the Pluto is not very personal. So it might be quite hard to connect with him, see how you feel with it. But he has this I don't really care about you. It's about the big picture of the world and evolution. So this isn't personal. Sorry if it hurts. That's Pluto. He's not trying to hurt you, but it's evolution, baby. Whereas Moon is very personal. So you might then go, okay, so if I have this evolutionary, and in evolutionary astrology, which is a particular style of astrology, Pluto is exceptionally important. He's a very powerful part of what they look at because he's so karmic. So if as an evolutionary being, I came in with these Virgo and Pluto concepts, that's bigger than me, but how do I feel about it? And how do I digest it? And how do I embody it as a moon in Gemini? And we don't agree. We're both mutable, but we don't really see things the same way. So you could sit with those. So again, you have that extra dynamic if you want to add it with the transiting, the two natal, like I said, Jen, or your own two natal planets. And again, if you find this easy, don't be afraid to dive into pulling out two other planets, or in your case, you could go, oh, let me just add my sun. And you can do it. You can create the whole aspect pattern and feel it all out.
Cool. Thanks, Cindy.
So her moon her moon is in Cancer?
No, her moon is in Gemini. Yeah.
Oh, Gemini. Yeah. Sure. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, Marty, goodness, take your pick. What are you going to work on?
So, well, I'm kind of fascinated by Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. I mean, I know Pluto. I feel like Pluto is very important.
Well, they're all important, but whoever's calling you out first, Jupiter, Saturn.
What would you recommend? Whatever.
I'm just having a look at where those are in relationship to each other. I think in your case, because right now Uranus in the sky is at 25 moving backwards degrees. You can't see it here, but he is. Of Taurus, which means he's coming back being on top of your Jupiter, which he's already done a few times in the last few years. He's been doing a number over this area of your chart. So that is an opportunity to feel into your Jupiter ascendant conjunction, which is not really another planet, but also your Jupiter being impacted by the now Uranus. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you're going to feel into things Jupiterian. Jupiter's in your first house. Jupiter's really expansive. So what happens when I get into my body and I make my body really solid? And because Taurus is solid, it's like that, building block, earthy, and I let myself be big and I let my boundaries be strong and I take my time to do things and I enjoy my food and all those Taurian things, bring it into the application of your body. And then because it is right here at the ascendant, It's that point where it's the planet that was rising at the time of your birth, would be the first planet rise after your birth. So it's like, how do I rise up in this Jupiterian self? And then you've got the transiting Uranus coming back to sort of stick a little lightning bolt, like sticking your finger in a plug and saying, what about this? What about this? What about this? These electrical impulses, this paradigm shift. How about you see yourself differently? And I like this because you are very identified with your Aries self. Since the beginning of starting working together, you've always felt the strong Aries. And remember the shock of finding out you were actually quite strong and as strong in your Taurus. And you have a Taurus sister and you have a Taurus husband. And you were like, I don't know if I can get on board with being Taurus. So this is your opportunity to get big in your Taurus and allow Jupiter to shock you with where some of the gifts and maybe the problems around this Taurian archetype are for you, because it's kind of like a triple conjunction, because in your chart you have Jupiter conjunct your ascendant, and in the sky we have Uranus coming to conjunct. You're working with like that intensity at this point of me. And I think with a lot of things going on in your life, it is this opportunity to go, who am I really? Or how can I be more of me than I ever knew I was?
Okay. I feel like that seems very appropriate.
Okay. So we've got homework. But like I say, take it as far or as little as you want, but just to get a little playful and a little creative and very, very our perspective of how we can use astrology. Because I don't have to be an astrologer to go and spend a little time contemplating certain things in my chart and how I feel about that, and giving myself that, how does that seem to enact itself in my life? And can I adjust that, especially when we start adding transiting kind of planets? Like, does it have to be like that? Or can I alter it? Do I need to mute it? Do I need to turn up the volume? What's going on with me in those spaces? Okay. So thank you. I enjoyed that. I know it's a